It Happened on the Job, the podcast for relatable conversations with contractors. Sponsored by Goodman Insurance.
Welcome to It Happened on the Job, episode 133. Today, my name is Mike. That's Brian.
Yo.
Our guest this afternoon, we got Kirk Lane, president of Direct Shades and Blinds. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me, guys.
No, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, you know, it's good. There's lots going on in this world, and we're just trying to manage our way, navigate our way through it. So excited to take a little
truth, right?
Yeah, excited to take a little break and talk about it for a second and kind of reflect on
Deep
where
breath,
we're
right?
at.
Deep breath and think about it. Yeah,
exactly.
So give us a little history. I know we chatted a little bit before we started here. Seems like there's a lot you're into.
Yeah.
But how did you get started? How did you get to where you are? All the things in between. We want to hear this.
Yeah,
hear the
absolutely. You know, it's a fun, unique story. I'm a little biased in that equation, but you know, as I mentioned, I actually come from the event technology world. So I spent the better part of 30 years in a variety of different positions, both operational and sales wise. In the audiovisual world. So specifically, when I was in college, I had a roommate that said, hey, my dad owns a production company. Do you want to go roll cables and push cases for, you know, beer money? And I was 19 and in college and said, yes. That sounds like a fantastic idea. And at the time, I'd been playing guitar for probably a year or two, right? So I was one of those guys that wasn't afraid to plug things in and try it out. In fact, so my roommate's dad, who owned this production company, gave me the best advice that I give to any person that wants to get in the technical side. Play with it until it starts smoking.
Right.
When it starts smoking, you're probably doing something bad. So, but the point is, like, we're so afraid. We're so afraid of technology. And you know, you got to understand, this is early 90s, so we were even more afraid because we didn't have these phones that can do everything for us. Like, we were frightened at programming VCRs. So it was a scary time. So if you were one of those individuals that was cool with walking up to something and looking at it and going, oh,
pushing that and plugging that in.
Yeah, right? Oh, what does this do? What does this do? So, you know, I was interested. I was in a band. I was in college. So all of a sudden I joined this event technology audiovisual world, and I'm doing shows in Hollywood, and I'm working with, you know, at the time, which were, you know, we're doing the roasts for the in Hollywood for Sherman Helmsley, and I'm, you know, meeting and talking to Steve Allen and Milton Berle, and
no kidding.
I mean, I'm of an age where I still knew who those individuals were, and they still held a lot of weight with me. And of course, this is the 90s, so you're a young, impressionable kid. I'm, you know, doing these big, massive shows with these people that I've grown up with on TV and through other mediums, and it was exciting for me. So I put everything I could into it. I, at the time, or shortly thereafter, got married, had a kid, was pretty young, needed a steady gig, and the production
that
work
wasn't working nights and weekends.
The production work was good and fun and cool, but it wasn't steady.
Right.
So same individual had kind of the similar path, went, I need to move on to something steady. He moved to the Disneyland Resort Hotels and was doing the audiovisual for them. Now, it was with a company called AVHQ, which was we called a leasee. So I went to Disney, I wore the badge, I went to the training, everything else, but my paycheck came from AVHQ, right? So worked my way up as a tech, lead tech, assistant director. Then over a couple of years became a regional manager, then became a regional vice president of an area in the Los Angeles market. And then took a detour, was kind of at that point had been in the audiovisual world for about a decade, big hockey fan, and had been doing a lot of work because I was at the Disneyland Resort Hotels with the Ducks, right? And they had their event that was created called Ducks and Tucks. And I was the event producer and director from its inception in 99 up until about 2006.
It's like the big charity dinner they do,
It's a big charity. So they all dressed up in tuxedos and then they would hand everything out,
all
right?
The serving and all that stuff,
exactly.
Right?
So they would have all their events at the Disneyland Resort Hotels because at the time, Disney had still owned the organization. So I ended up meeting a lot of people within the organization, especially being a huge fan. My oldest daughter got a skating lesson from Paul Correa. So any Ducks fans know that name.
So at the end of this, when are we going to hockey games?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So, I got to know and meet these guys, Paul Correa, Teemu Solani, Mike Babcock was the coach at the time. If you guys recall, if you're fans, 2003 is when they lost in 7 games to New Jersey. And then when the Samuelis took over, I think 06,
and they won in
05, 06, and then they won the cup the next year. So I
have pictures on my wall in my office. We'll go look at it.
Nice. Absolutely. I got to do the fantasy camp for a year, which was awesome. Really, really cool. And the reason I tell that story is it will lead into my role here at DSB. And so I'm a big hockey fan. Started playing hockey in my early 30s, right? I was a soccer guy and still am.
You started playing in your early 30s?
Started playing. So remember the guy I told you about that said, hey, do you want to work for his dad, and then moved on?
Beer money,
He's one of my best friends. I'm actually having lunch with him after this because his production company is literally across the toll road.
Okay. There you go.
So I'm going to be heading over there. And the main reason I'm heading there is they just had blinds installed into their production facility from Direct Shades and Blinds because they are doing all of these hybrid and virtual events. So they had to rent pipe and drape because they have a lot of windows, very similar buildings. Right. If you look in your foyer, your lobby area, lots of sunlight coming in. Yeah. So they were renting pipe and drape. Well, now we've got nice motorized shades that are going to be putting in there. So this same guy's like, hey, we love hockey. Let's start playing. So we started playing roller on tennis courts and whatnot. He got transferred to Chicago, which was where our company's corporate office was, started playing ice. I had to go out there for work. He said, go buy some ice skates and bring your gear. I flew out to Chicago. We played hockey for a week every morning at 6 a.m. in -6 degrees Chicago in January or February, what it was. But I fell in love even more. I was already a fan, but now I was playing. Yeah. And I'd been an athlete, right? I played soccer and everything else. So there was a familiarity. Going back to the story with the Ducks, I developed a pretty good relationship with them. This was about 03, kind of end of 03. I basically had gone through all the interview process. I was going to be hired as their sales manager for Seats and Suites, right? So I put in my 2 weeks notice. I'm like, I'm finally getting out of the event technology world. I'm going to go work sales with, my team. And the 2004 lockout is announced. And 50% of, So I went back into the audiovisual industry, did a couple stints with some production companies because I had some experience. But then I got into manufacturing, right? Still in the audiovisual world. And we were building custom tables that were integrated. So we would do the specific cutouts for all that other stuff. Yeah. We were doing credenzas. We were doing digital signage, became pretty huge at the time. So we were doing enclosures. But I was still interacting with my people in the audiovisual world, right? So fast forward up to probably about 2017, I think it was. Same individual, my good buddy that I'm going to be having dinner with. He had a neighbor that was the CEO of a window film company, window coverings, window film, right? For both residential and commercial. And so he was in the process of expanding his business. So he went to my buddy who had experience in mergers and acquisitions and things of that nature. So they struck out a deal. He started working for this window film organization. And is it okay if I use names on this stuff?
Whatever you feel comfortable with.
Solar Art, your friends in the window film industry.
Solar Art.
Hey,
Solar Art.
Matt D'Arienzo, right?
Yeah.
He was on our show.
He was on our show.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So where are you going to lunch?
So, well, not his dad's pizza place, maybe.
We go there all the time. Yeah.
So Matt and my buddy Brian are neighbors.
That's crazy small.
And he brings Brian on, to expand. And as you guys know, you met Matt.
He's just expanded out into LA.
He is a go-getter.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, man.
He was not into window film at all. He just kind of got into it, and essentially acquired. I think at this point they're probably up to 10 to 12, maybe even more different window film organizations. brought them all into one, utilized their size and strength to, bring on different lines and to expand their business. Well, Brian was involved, became their chief operating officer.
Brian's your buddy, right?
Brian's my buddy,
Okay.
right? So the guy from the very beginning and the guy I'm having lunch with this afternoon, he knows that I had just left the other company that we had both worked for. He had left the year prior. And he said, come on board and be our director of business development for Solar Art. So I came on board as director of business development for Solar Art. And really our focus was trying to move in the commercial market. So that's really where my experience started in the window coverings industry, which now I'm the president of a company that does window coverings, primarily shades and some blinds, even though we're direct shades and blinds. We've kind of been moving to the shades world, but that's kind of where it really started, right? And so I got a really good understanding of how bids come in, doing the takeoffs, understanding what your trade is, what division that is, giving them an estimate, going back and forth, understanding the different RFIs and everything that come in. And so what I was really trying to do is expand that commercial market. So we were looking at the large high-rise buildings that were built before they really started glazing glass like they do now, right? The low E type glass that you're seeing on all the new builds. So it was the opportunity to introduce this technology that has been around for a long time. And obviously Matt probably talked about it a lot more specifically than I did, but the technology has been around, if I'm not mistaken, since like the 50s or 60s. Most people know it as a car scenario, but then obviously it started moving into the residential and the commercial market. Well, that was the primary market, that residential. And in the commercial side, it was more the retail stuff, right? They hadn't really gone into the high-rise buildings.
Stuff,
Well, when I started, it was just starting to happen, right? And the great thing about it is you could not only change the efficiency of a building, you could actually change the look of it.
From the outside,
right?
that mirror
Because
look
functional and fashionable.
Exactly. Depending on what you're doing. You're doing external film. You can do, you could do different colors on the mullions. You could paint various sides of it. And you could really change the overall look and feel of the building. At the same time, you're totally improving your energy efficiency. And, they're doing studies that the window film industry, because obviously they need as much marketing as they can get because they're way behind window coverings, right? And so we're typically going into homes and the guy who does shades and blinds was just there an hour before, right? And then the customer is going to look and say, well, this is what shades and blinds cost. This is what I know it does. I feel a lot more comfortable because in my life, I've grown up with drapery, shades and blinds. But window film, here's my view of window film.
Balance boxes. Do those exist anymore? I remember my dad custom built ours, and it was just a nightmare because I had to help him. But with all the padding and the beading and all that stuff,
it just has a negative connotation for people because when they think of window film, they think of the purple peeling film on the old El Camino that's driving down the street. It's all bubbly, and so that's their idea of window film, and they don't realize the technologies that had taken place in probably the last, we'll call it 10 to 15 years, far surpassed the first 30 years of the window film industry, right? And so you started getting into ceramic films, and you really started getting some of the metallic dyes that were being taken out, and the lifetime was so much longer. The efficiencies were so much better, but the world didn't know about it. So that was kind of our mission, right? Is to let at least the world that was concentrated on it. So it was a really difficult sell, right? Because
you're educating and selling.
I can come into you and say, I'm going to sell you this bottle of water, and you've got a preconceived notion of Sparklets versus Arrowhead versus Avion versus everything else because you all experience with it, right? But if you've never had sparkling water, you're going to think about it for a second, right? You don't know what the actual benefits are if you're really going to like it because it's almost the same, but it's not quite the same, right? So just a similar analogy, it was a difficult sale because I had to sell the client on, hey, this is what we're trying to accomplish here. So anyway, I had mentioned the hockey. Well, when we started playing hockey, I met an individual named Craig, and he was in the window coverings industry, actually, and owned his own organization called Remedy Blinds for decades. And while he was with Remedy Blinds, he started interacting with Vertilux, which is the mill that direct shades and blinds uses, right? So a company was started somewhat in that realm called Surface Solutions. And they started doing, and Craig was involved in starting that company. And they were doing flooring, they were doing countertops, they were doing window coverings. Developed a relationship a long time ago with Vertilux. So he moved away from a Remedy Blinds and started working directly for Vertilux, right? Became a regional vice president, was overseeing their spec department. Well, with this, there was the ties that he had with the Surface Solutions that he moved away from for obvious reasons.
Right.
And so he had another a good friend of his that was a diving buddy that took over Surface Solutions, changed it into direct shades and blinds, and started rolling. So if I remember the history specifically, they're probably about 7+ years old, something like that. I think they've been operating the DSB name for about 2 to 3 years now.
Okay.
And that was because they moved away from the other, the flooring, the countertops, and went to window covering specifically. So they started growing, and they were growing exponentially, like doubling almost year over year, right? Revenue, both contracted revenue as well as executed revenue, right? And that's the world we live in.
Right.
We need to understand what we've contracted, what's happening this quarter, next quarter, this year, next year. And then we have that operating revenue that's coming in as we're doing our jobs, whether it's our draws up front, our progress billing, all of those other things. So you've got to balance those together. So DSB started growing, again, doubling. And then last year when the pandemic hit, I don't want to say it was a screeching halt, but it definitely pumped the brakes.
It was a blip.
It was a blip. There was still business there. There was still business that had already been contracted. But there was this massive amount of business that was in flux, right? Because you didn't know if investors were going to stay invested. You didn't know if general contractors were going to keep those projects, if they were keep them going, if they were going to delay them, what were the developers going to do it? I mean, as you know, there's all these little hands in, but let's be honest, it was all going back to the money. And the uncertainty in our world put a pause to that, and rightfully so, right? Because you need to understand what the economy is going to do and how you plan your business out to get through this time. Because the other issue we had, especially in the construction industry, was okay, so how do we handle this COVID, right? So if there's a COVID outbreak on my job site, how do I deal with it, right? So they had to put all of these protocols in place, and so but then there was also more costs involved as it relates to cleaning, and if you had to shut down, how that was going to impact schedules, and so it was a really crazy 6+ months or so, we'll say, from kind of March on. So let's go to last summer. Last March, a year ago, I'm a manager of business development for a rental event technology company. I'd been with them since the prior year, was really happy. This was
between Solar Art and where you are now?
This is between Solar Art and where I am now, right? Because it was tough with Solar Art and trying to get that going, and spent about 2 years with them, and still great friends and still interact. But this opportunity presented itself. It was where I had my experience. I said, I'm going to do it. Yeah. There was a great opportunity for me to move up within that organization, and maybe eventually 10 years down the road, take on some type of executive management level position, right? So I'm happy, right? I'm late 40s at this point. I've got 30 years under my belt in the industry. I'm in with a well-known, reputable company. I'm in Oakland because I'm covering California. I'm in Oakland. I have a flight. I am in the air. When I land, look at my phone, Alameda County is shut down. Yeah. So I literally got out of Alameda County, Oakland, at the last minute. Had my flight been delayed or had any other flight, I would have been stuck in there up in Oakland until they opened up, because this was right after the first fatality, unfortunately. So once that happened, I landed. I talked to my wife. I've been through, the economic downturn, 08, 09. I've been through 9/11. These are major things that impact businesses, and businesses have to make decisions, right? What type of operating cash do they have? Where are they with their banks? What are the banks going to do? There's obviously so many things that are involved in that. I'd been around long enough to know that my position was probably the first one to go because I had no direct sales. I was business development. So I was making happy with all of our customers. And there was a direct correlation that showed our revenues were going up, but I was not writing orders. I was not directly tied to sales. So,
the events are shutting down too, right?
Events are shutting down. And so we had the conference call, hey, we're good. And the company was good. It was solvent. It had cash to last for a while and still did. But when your revenue just stops. So I saw the writing on the wall, knew it was coming. A week later, I got the hey, are you available for an 8 o'clock conference call tomorrow morning? And I'm like, well, no, this is probably not for a promotion. So, and then unfortunately we had to part ways. They were great to me. I mean, I have to say they were fantastic. There was no animosity and an open door, when things got going to come back. So I, like many Americans and people across the world, went on a 3-month clean of my garage. And
I did the same thing.
Doing all of those projects that have been sitting around for 10, 15 years. And I did it diligently and I enjoyed it. And it was great and good moments with my family and everything else. And fortunately, we were okay as a family, that we didn't need to dip too far into, any retirement savings or any of that other stuff. We were, my wife's a teacher, thankfully, fantastic job, benefits, all that other stuff. 2 of my kids are in school, one going into college, one going into high school, the other one graduated and on her own and working. So, it was not sure what to do, right? My other sources of income were being a referee for soccer. There's no games, so I've got no income there. My other source of income is gigging, and there's
that's not happening
no gigs. Yep. So, I went on a 3-month clean of my garage. And during that time, I got a call from my buddy Craig, who I'd mentioned earlier, who we played ice hockey with. My ice hockey career lasted about 10 years. And then I started getting some knee issues, had like 3 knee surgeries and a hip surgery, and playing goalkeeper in ice hockey with, 3 knee surgeries. I'm not intelligent, but I'm also not dumb. So I just went probably not the best thing.
Well, you get to one of those points, right? Because I had back surgery about 1.5 years ago, almost 2 years ago. And a lot of it was because I bowl and play softball and do all it. And the wife looks at you and he goes, is it really worth all that if you're having to have surgeries on all these things?
Yeah.
And probably the same conversations you probably had either with yourself or with
but
your
unfortunately
wife.
It took me about 10 years to go, oh, I hear you now, honey. You're right. And
maybe I don't need to play ice hockey if I'm needing 3 knee surgeries.
Waking up was a lot harder, for work, because you had 11 o'clock games, and of course you have a couple of, cold ones afterwards. And you're on that, I call it gig high, on the work side and on playing side. But when you play sports, you do something that late at night, you're wide awake till 2 or 3 in the morning. So anyway, lots of reasons to move away. Craig and I remained good friends. We saw each other a couple times each year, whether it was lunch, dinner, just a phone conversation, whatever else. He reached out to me last summer and said, hey, what are you doing? And I said, I'm a professional garage cleaner. He's all, got a buddy I want you to meet. They're looking for some help. So went over and met with our owner, CEO, CFO, Gene, and they were looking to bring on someone to run the operations and someone to run the sales. So obviously my most immediate experience and background was on the sales side. So because one of the things that also had happened during COVID is, our company was growing, but there was, we just needed more resources to really facilitate that growth. So the sales team was really helping out a lot with a lot of the operations. They were not necessarily focused as much on the sales because they had immediate jobs to deal with. And there was uncertainty in those sales. Yeah. So there's not that motivation, to really go after it. We learned a lot of lessons that we could have done during then that would have really helped us kind of through the transition. But one of the major things that Gene decided to do was to bring on a president and someone to run the operations, and then someone to run the sales. Right. So that happened. They brought the person to become the president about a month prior to me coming on board. Someone who has, multiple degrees in the construction industry, had been working for Western National on job sites, had been in the industry, about 10 years younger than me, but had
notches in his belt for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. Right guy. And so he came on board and just hit the ground running, started, evaluating where we were, what we were doing, brought on a field operations manager, which the person we hired actually was a superintendent for high-rise buildings, working with Lend-Lease and had owned his own company at one time. So, we were finding the right people to help with this growth, right? Cue the entertainment guy who's running the sales now. Yeah. And when we're starting to rebound, right? All of a sudden now because we have our sales force focused on sales and not sales when they can, right, but they're focused on sales. And then companies really started figuring out how to navigate their way through the pandemic and went, okay, we can still get things done. Maybe we're not going to get them done at the pace we're used to. And maybe things won't fund as quickly as we want them to. And maybe there'll be restrictions that make things difficult. But as we do in America and we figure it out, right? Our entrepreneurial insight figures its way out. And so we needed to be pliable and moving with that. So we set some, new kind of policies and procedures and protocol moving forward, really supported the sales team like they'd never been supported before, really encouraged them, really understood, what their role is with our organization, what their focus is, where you want to put your energy, where you don't want to put as much energy, right? Because as an organization from a sales side, we're getting bid invites coming in from multiple different sources, right? Yeah. All the organic ones from companies that we've already done business before, or just going out and being involved in, Procore, Build Connect, or any of those other elements that are out there within the industry that say, hey, this project's funded, it's coming on board, we're now sending out to the trades. So we've got all of these coming in. And they vary from, really small projects to, multi-tower high-rise projects. And so you could really narrow the purview, the scope of what you were going after. And you realize...
Be pretty selective about the stuff you want to do.
This is our sweet spot. Yep. This is where we perform well. This is a little bit outside of our comfort zone. This is the same amount of work as this, but a quarter of the revenue. Yeah. So while you're going to have a few of these jobs that you have to do because it's the foot in the door project, or it's the, hey, you've been really good to us, we'll do something that's not necessarily within our normal scope of work. So you've got those going on, but you really want to stay within that sweet spot. So that's what we did on a sales side. And it started picking up. And at the time, guys, realize I'm outside of a couple of years with a window film company. I'm learning on the job, literally, right? So whether it's going to looking at competitors' websites, working within LinkedIn, working within our own manufacturing information that's available, going out to our job sites, meeting with our installers, meeting with our fabricators, meeting with all of the parties that are involved. It was a crash course. I use that term, drinking off the fire hose, and it's but it's great, right? There's a lot of motivation there for me, not just from the fact that the industry that I'm used to and that I've experienced in is basically devastated, but I'm at a time in my life where I want challenge, right? Yeah. If you remember when I was telling you about the last job I had in event technology, I was looking to surf that.
Yeah, it was comfortable.
Till the end. Yeah. Like that could have been my, I'm almost 50, 15 years. That's my, that could be it, right? And there was a complacency there. There was, I did my 30 years. I have a great network. I'm just going to go out there and benefit off of that 30 years of experience until I get the opportunity, right? Sit back and wait until I get that opportunity to move into a management role. Well, all of a sudden this came about, right? And so I'm dealing with the sales, I'm learning. Well, the gentleman that was hired to be the president, great job, fantastic. Didn't necessarily know that he was going to be in for the long haul, which was fine. Well, that got cut even shorter because he ended up essentially getting the dream job that he got his schooling and everything else for. Still in our industry, more in the development side, right? So end of the year, last year, we find out, when I say end of the year, I mean literally like the last couple of weeks of the year. And so
you'd have been there for maybe 4 or 6 months?
I'd been there, since basically late July-ish, early August.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And, the owner came to me and said, I like what I see. I know you don't have the background, but you have the, we'll call it business savvy, I guess, and the management experience and just kind of that understanding and ability to manage teams and work teams, And so I appreciated that and thought about it for a short time and went, yeah, I'll take the role, because this is a challenge that I had never predicted, never planned for, never thought about. And this really is the opportunity for me to take something that's established, that is growing, and utilizing all of the resources around to help that grow.
Yeah.
So it's been a crazy almost 4 months now. It's almost a little over 3 months. And the sales they're here, they're coming in. The jobs that are starting, that are already contracted jobs, I'm knee deep and understanding all of our partners that are involved, right? Because we have some that are full-time employees, some that are contractors. You find that balance and mix to get the jobs done. But our footprint as an organization, we're in the Western United States. We have active jobs here in Southern California, Northern California, that has probably, we'll say, the majority of our jobs going on. We have jobs that just recently finished in the Portland area, and 2 new starting within the next month or two. We have a very large high-rise project starting in Seattle. We've got several jobs going on in Reno right now. We've got several jobs starting in Arizona. We have bids out and are in the running for projects in Colorado. We're starting to break into the Utah market, into the Idaho market. And then we've just recently expanded into Texas. We now have an office in Texas, and we have a team down there that does everything, right? So they do the sales, the fabrication, and the installs. Yeah. And then they're based out of Houston, but they're handling all of the Texas market. And then we're also moving into kind of the rest of it. So we've got jobs that we're bidding in Nashville, jobs that we're bidding in both South Florida, and then in the the mid Florida, in the Tampa, Orlando area. Not so much going on East Coast right now, which is fine. Again, the growth is right on the path.
You guys sound like you're pretty busy already.
Yeah. And we brought on a lot of the right people, but we have a long ways to go. I mean, I'm not naive to the fact that there's a lot that needs to happen, right. But we're really bringing our company to the forefront of. We want to make sure we've got agreements between all of our partners. We want to make sure that we've got everything covered, whether it's your contractor's license, right. Your workers' comp, because there's a lot of trunk slammers out there, and I'm finding that, and there's a lot of people that are using them, and they don't have the certifications, and they may do good work, right? There's, that would probably be a whole nother podcast talking about, the legality and where things are done. We're doing everything we possibly can to make sure that we've basically, dotted our I's and crossed our T's.
So where have you guys been able to find success? I mean, it's one thing to be successful in your own market, right, in Southern California, but to be able to grow that quickly among different markets, what would you say is your secret? I mean, maybe not your secret sauce, you don't have to put that out there, but what's making you better than everybody else to the point where you can get jobs in that many other locations that quickly?
From my overview and in my breaking down what we've done and what we have contracted, most of that growth has come from relationships, right? So you find a partner, you find a general contractor, you find a developer, right? And within that particular organization, you get involved deep with a couple of people, right? Yeah. Then you do the job, right? And then you've got your superintendents and your field engineers and your supervisors going, really like the way DSB handled this project, right? Their field operations guy got in touch with me right up front, got the construction schedule, was communicating with me weekly to understand where we were at, communicated any issues or delays that we may have in our supply chain, right? Because we use one mill, we use Vertilux, right? Where a lot of our competitors will use multiple different manufacturers. Right. We put all our eggs in one basket, I guess you could say that. There's a lot of benefits from that. So, but to answer,
become an expert in that one thing,
right? Yeah. And I think that helps us as well, right? Because we're getting our customers used to the product, right? And when we say the product, it's not just the Vertilux shade. It's the communication up front. It's the takeoff process. It's the how we're following up. It's how we do our scope reviews. It's how we make sure, and it's how we are honest with our customers, right? On something that maybe was overlooked on their side or maybe overlooked on our side. And some are going to be reasonable to it and some aren't going to be reasonable to it. But, I think that relationship and that honesty up front has really been the key to our success.
Well, I think more importantly, I think it's how you guys funnel that down, that mentality and that thought process down to the guys in the field, right?
Right.
It's one thing if you as the head sales guy or the president or whoever, director of operations, is buddy with the head or the sales or the head of the GC or everything else.
Yep.
But if your people are not meshing well with their people at the lower level, that's going to obviously flow.
Right, they're influencers, and that's it. I mean, we have.
I think that's important to.
We have biweekly sales calls, right, with our mill partner. It just shows the partnership there, right? I mean, they want to know the progress of the projects that we're on. They also want to know how they can help, right? And so that's a unique situation that we have a manufacturer that isn't going kiss the ring. You're lucky to represent our product. You're lucky to have that name on your website. No, they came to us and said, listen, we're trying to grow in this market, right? We know we're not in that, one or two spot, but that is our goal to get there. But the thing is they're manufacturing their own system. It's a complete product, which is different from our competitors and allows them to stand out. And for them to get knee deep involved in our interactions with the customers. And we just got back from actually training the North American corporate offices in Miami. So we were there probably 4 weeks ago. About 4 or 5 of the managers and executives from DSB went out because he just launched this new training, right? So we're in the lab and we're meeting with the manufacturer and we are giving them real world, this works, this doesn't work. I came here from a project in Irvine where they had just introduced this new plastic end cap on a window covering blind that goes on the outside as opposed to inside the windowsill, right? So you really need the whole thing if it's not what we call a cassette system, which is fully enclosed. If it's a fascia and bracket system, you need something to close off the ends to clean it up. Well, we'd been using these metal end pieces, had some double-sided tape. It worked. It looked okay.
Right.
But it wasn't that next level. So now we have these nice molded plastic end caps that are the same color. They have little notches. They pop right on, right? Well, that was just developed based upon feedback from those that are out in the field doing it. And they said, this is something we'd really like, something that's secure, makes it look a lot nicer. So when you have that kind of support and you have that kind of backing, that allows you to be successful, going back to your question. Yeah. When you are, in close with your partner that essentially you're representing, and they're backing you on all fronts, right? Not just the manufacturing side, but they're backing us on, we're liking each other's posts on social media, and we're providing content to each other, and we're helping each other grow, because ultimately what we want is for Vertilux, our partner, to be the spec from the architect
Right.
on a majority of the jobs
Right.
that we run into. Right now, we're only on a small percentage, but it's growing, right? But what will help it grow is when more of these customers of ours, from both sides, from their higher up executive level, VP level, manager, director level, but also their superintendents, their field engineers, all of those people, if they're continually recommending us,
Yep.
the higher ups are continually happy with the cost,
Yep.
right? Because let's be honest, you're not even considered unless you're in that budget,
Right.
right? And unless you can really convince them that your
you're that
extra
much better,
$100,000
yeah.
is going to be worth it to them, and that's a rare occurrence. So you have to be in the realm. You have to make sure everyone is happy with where they're at profitability wise. But when you have that partnership, and then when you have the growth and you have the partnership with your customers, right?
Well, I have to imagine it instills some confidence with your customers too, knowing that you guys have that kind of relationship with the manufacturer. Right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't know how you portray that, but I imagine you do on some level,
Mm-hmm.
because that's from a consumer standpoint, right? If you know that guy installing it has a relationship with the manufacturer, so that if anything goes wrong, it's not, hey, you need to call that person, or the manufacturer goes, no, you need to call.
No,
you
it's
guys are
wide
working
open.
together
In fact, they travel with us when we do sales calls.
Yep.
And sometimes they go out and do their own sales calls on our projects. And I mean, they have many other partners, of course.
Right.
But they're going out there and they're going, how's DSB doing? Right?
Yeah.
They're checking on us.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I love it.
Yeah, and then they want to, because they see you as an extension of them, right? So
Absolutely.
if you're installing and representing the company well, I mean, it's just adds to the resume and future projects that will be coming in, right?
Exactly.
You're part of that product, right? Everybody's part of that product. So if that product looks really good, they're happy with you, man. Yeah.
And then I think the
Sky's the limit.
final thing for us, and really what I hope is going to take our growth to our goal level, is I'm a showman. I come from the entertainment industry, right? I've been on the technology side forever. I worked at the Disneyland Resort hotels for the better part of 7 or 8 years. I went through the management, right? I wore that badge proudly with the mouse on it.
Right.
I was a Disney employee. No, I wasn't necessarily getting paid by Disney, but
you are though. Yeah.
when I was running my teams, I would tell them this, like, oh, we're just the guys setting up the projectors and the microphones. No, you're not. You are the person that's actually going to provide them the technology to be able to do
on
what
the
they're
shows,
doing,
yeah.
putting on the show, whether it's an entertainment show, whether it's a sales, whatever else. So you got to understand, this may be the very first time they come to Disneyland. Maybe they're from Australia. Maybe they're from the Midwest, and they've never had the opportunity to come to a Disney property and really experience it. And this is whether it's a customer on the event side, or we're walking through the property, right? And because I'm a guy in a suit with a name badge on,
yep.
I get asked a lot of questions. In fact, there was a lady, an Asian lady, who stopped me and said, I need to know what the exchange rates in Australia are for my money here. And
Deer in headlights.
deer in headlights first, but I knew at
Happy
the
to
time,
help. Let me
I
point
knew
you
at
in the
the
right
time
direction.
that they literally had an exchange office down over by what was the monorail in what was the embassy area before.
So you could
the
point her
Grand
in the
California.
direction. Yeah.
I walked her there, right? I had to get somewhere, but part of that Disney is I want that person to feel comfortable,
Right.
Yep.
right? I couldn't answer her question specifically, but I could walk her to the location that could. So I walked her there, and it wasn't just around the
Right.
corner. It
Yeah.
was all the way across property. And then I hustled my butt over there, to where I needed to go to get it done. But I provided that service, right? And what I used to tell my team was, most of my guys, they all grew up in Southern California, right? We went to Disney 4 or 5 times a year.
Everybody has season
no big
passes,
deal.
right?
I mean, I grew up in the high desert, which was a couple hours away. But when I'd come and visit my aunts and uncles and my grandparents, we always went to Disneyland. We always went to Knott's Berry Farm. We always did that. So it wasn't that, it didn't necessarily.
Wasn't as magical. Yeah.
It wasn't.
Didn't hold that revere in your mind.
It wasn't consciously,
Right.
But subconsciously it was. And then when I started working there, I truly understood, right? Like, I may be the first person that a family that's been saving for 10 years to fly their family out from, Missouri or from England or from Canada or from wherever. And they're coming from everywhere. And they've saved all this time to create this experience. And what if the very first person they meet that has a Disney name badge goes, I don't know, I got to get over here. I'm out of here. Yeah. And we've all experienced that on a retail level or at a restaurant or even at a theme park maybe, right? We've all experienced that customer service. And that first impression is huge. And now you have this negative outlook. Well, why can't we take that sort of thing in everything that we do, right?
Well, I would even say, too, I was at Staples a week ago, and I was having to pick up note cards for my kid, right, for some project. And I walked around the store. It wasn't a big store. It was a smaller Staples. I walked around that thing twice. Now, I'm a guy. I miss things, right? I'm looking fast.
Yeah.
But I walked up to the girl, and I was like, I just need 3x5 note cards, and I cannot find them for the life of me. And she goes, they're back there in aisle 14. And I thought, okay,
really?
Right? Literally, small store. Maybe take you not even 30 seconds, 5 seconds to take me to aisle 14, right? And I can find it, and she can point it out to me. But so I think to your point about that lady that was asking for exchange rates, the fact that you not only said, oh, I know where that is, but I'm going to take you there, right? Because I think if you say, first of all, if you say, I don't know, or you just say, it's over there somewhere. Or even if you said, it's right over there, they go, okay, I've never been here in my life.
Right.
I don't know how. So that it's that extension of service, I think, that that my wife was a Disney princess for like 15 years. So when you're talking, I'm right there with you, right? So that badge, when she would be out of costume and just, from one end of the backstage to walk across the property to get to the other backstage, she has to put on her badge. And she's walking across, and people ask her those same questions. They don't know that she's Snow White 5 minutes before, right? They don't really care, but the badge cares, and she has to take them. Yep. And she, I mean, like you, I think there's a personality that goes with it but really needs to be a part of that service.
Absolutely.
Model, which translates to everything. Any company, any industry, I think, is huge. And I mean, it sounds like, if I understand correctly, that has translated with you with DSB as well.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
And that's, it starts from us treating ourselves respectfully internally as an organization, right? This industry is known as this rough and gruff and rah, 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 rah. Well, you can have that, but you can also have professionalism, right? You can also have, hey, we're scheduled to be on this job site this week, right? This is what we're scheduled to do. We're going to get this many units done. And what's wrong with me going and setting the expectation with the superintendent and saying, hey, I know you're busy, but we're just starting on this job. I'm going to install the first couple of units. Would you mind coming and taking a look at our work so that we know it's meeting your level of expectation, right? And that we're not hiding from the inspection. We're facing the inspection head on. And that does a lot for everyone. That does a lot for our employees as well. Right. Because if our employees know that their work is going to be reviewed, then they're going to work a little harder.
Higher level of accountability,
But then praise them as you go, right?
Yeah.
And share the, you got to share the negative experience, but you got to share the positive experience as well, right? Because we all wake up every day and we're like, okay, I've got a lot of choices. I can stay in bed, right? I can wake up, I can go work out. Or I can go wake up and I can go look at Facebook for the next 3 hours, right? We got a lot of choices that we face every day. And you have to make that decision. What are you trying to accomplish? What do you want to do, right? And at the end of the day, I'm selling shades, right? It's not rocket science. We're not doing brain surgery here, but it's serving a purpose for a lot of different people, and it employs a lot of different people, right? And that employment gives them satisfaction to wake up every day and hopefully do a good job. So that professionalism has to come internally first, right? You treat your employees with respect. You treat them with honesty, and you show them what where their areas of improvement or faults or however you want to approach it, right? You've got to go over those things, but in the same breath, you got to share in the successes, but you also got to lay out the expectations, right? Where most people are just like, I just show up and hang shades. No, I want you to show up, make sure that, you've showered within the last week or so. You might have thought about shaving, if you don't have a big beard like me. You're wearing all your PPE, you have your hard hat on, you have your vest on. Does the job site require gloves? Does the job site require glasses? Are you prepared? Are you going into finished units? Do you have booties? Are you wearing your DSB t-shirt, or are you wearing your DSB jacket and or your vest? And when you go there, did you check in with our point of contact? And did you tell him what unit you're working on? And most of them are like this. Like, I'm looking at you guys like, what? I'm like, well, you are employed to do this, and it's not just hanging shades. There's a lot that goes along with it, right? And yeah, I'm all about not judging a book by its cover, but the perfect example that I'll give is a world that I'm from. I've been a referee for 30 years, right? If you're in sports and you see the referee come out and he's got a sock hanging down and his jersey's untucked, and you can tell he hasn't run around the block in a few weeks, your first impression is, oh no.
Yeah.
Right?
Any little thing after that.
Yeah. That's your first impression as the coach and as the spectator.
Yeah.
As the player, you know what my first impression is? Yes.
Got him.
I can get away with a lot today.
I'm going to get away with a lot. And then what do you do? And I say this to in any of the classes when I'm teaching a referee, to someone that was an athlete. What is your first 10 minutes of the game? And everyone says, oh, we're strategizing to figure out how. No, you're not. You're seeing what you can get away with.
Yep.
You're seeing what kind of game is this going to be, or competition, whatever it is. Doesn't matter what it is. What can I get away with, right? Whoop, that was too far. I got a whistle. So I'm going to wheel it back. Oh, that one was okay. Okay, so I'm going to stay in this range of intensity, right? Yeah, I understand that maybe halfway through, a bunch of other shenanigans are going to go around, and the ref might. But the long story longer is, come confident, come somewhat prepared, right? I'm all about learning the inside, but part of learning the inside is how do you treat the outside.
Right.
So we want our teams on all levels, from sales to operations, to going with a professionalism, going with a confidence, but also going with an honesty, right? I don't go in with these meetings and they're, oh, here's Kirk, here's the president. And they're like, oh, wow, you must have 30 years of experience. No, I started last July. I couldn't even tell you what that bracket is or what our color choices are.
But I'm learning it.
But I'm learning it. And I've installed shades, and I've programmed motors, and I've gone to fabricators, and
I have a team.
I'm there, right? I've got my work boots on now. I was out at a job site today doing something that I could have had somebody else do, but I want to do it because I want to get my hands, my eyes,
I think it goes
my
back
ears.
to that mentality at the beginning of when you talked about pushing all the buttons and plugging things in, right? Like, you got to get in there and do it, and you gotta have that confidence to try those things out and test them.
And that's where you grow.
Yep.
Right? Our growth comes from how we perform out in the field.
Yeah.
Your marketing is important, how you present yourself, your online presence, your getting out and having meetings, all that's hugely important. But at the end of the day, you're going to go with what you feel comfortable with. Mm-hmm. And if that person always is providing for you, and when they aren't, they're being honest with you about why they aren't, you're going to think twice before you change that routine. Right? So that's what we're trying to do. It's not easy, but it's also, I think, at the end of the day, it takes a lot more energy to be angry and to, find the reason why you can't do something than it is to go out and do it, right? Find a way to yes. That's kind of my internal, external motto that I've lived with for a long time. Find a way to yes. Sometimes I take the path that's up the high, tall, scaled mountain. Sometimes I find the passageway in the middle. But until I go out and look, I don't know.
Right.
So find a way to yes, right? And you're going to hit a lot of no's along the way, but that's how we learn. That's how we grow. Right. So
where is your guys' sweet spot? You talked about trying to find that sweet spot and kind of getting comfortable there. Where is it that you guys are at now?
Multifamily housing, typically low end, like 3 stories up to 7 stories. we look at a project, and if we're in the, almost to about 1,000 shades for a project, and then getting into the 3,000 to 5,000 shades, because you got units that need 3 and you got units that need 10, right? It depends on what it is. So that's kind of our sweet spot. It's the multifamily homes. And we're looking at other ways to expand and where that might make sense. But right now, there's a lot of building going on in this marketplace.
That's what I was just kind of going to get into. What is the breakdown you have of the new stuff you're doing versus retro stuff?
We're in kind of an in-between period where we're finishing up a bunch of jobs that we've been doing for the last year and a half or so. We have about 20 projects that are starting within the next 3 months. Wow. So, to put that in perspective, at any given time, DSB is typically dealing with, on the low end, 20 projects, on the high end, 30 to 40 projects. Again, largely Western United States. It's growing to others. So we're kind of in that, I would say, on average, between the 25 and 30 different projects that are going on in any given time.
And most of those are new construction stuff?
Most, 98%.
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm. Any TI stuff that we're doing is, again,
on a smaller scale.
And it's typically, we're doing it as a, pathway to something else.
Right.
Not what we're focused on, not what we're bidding. But yeah, and just to give you a perspective, we have several salespeople. One of them, who's been with us the longest, she has, oh my gosh, we were just reviewing the list. There is about 30 projects on what we're calling our hot list. Like, we're probably within the top 3 people, and there's a solid chance that we're going to be considered for it. Then there's another 30 or 40 that are in the, we're not even going to look at it until Q3, Q4 stage, but we've already engaged. We've already provided an estimate to them. We're in consideration. So that's one person, and she's essentially overseeing the better part of 50 plus jobs.
Wow.
And then we've just recently hired on a new salesperson, because I was also handling sales for a moment there. When I moved into this role, that was not going to happen. So we said we need to get someone. And it's kind of a different skill set, right? Where one is really using all these great relationships that she's had for decades in the industry, right? And she's got some good higher level relationships, but her core is in all of those decision makers that we really need, right? Yeah. Where the new person we brought in is kind of at the higher level relationship. And so it's that, like we talked about, you got to approach the sale from here, 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 and here. And if you don't, you're not going to meet your growth patterns. Right. I don't see that happening. You might get lucky, and you might find a great revenue stream. You might find this partner that's just killing it and doing 30 projects a year, and you're on 28 of them, and you're growing, and that's great. The problem is you're one financial issue away, or one lawsuit away from losing that that main revenue stream. So we want to be diverse in our relationships. We want to be diverse in our customers. But we want to be specific on the type of job that we're going after, because we've definitely figured out how to work in this market. And then, just like anyone, if there's not enough for us to reach our growth revenue goals in that area, well, then we see, how do we work
something else out,
right? Or here,
right?
And then you adapt to that.
Yeah.
So
I love that you guys are taking that mentality, or not necessarily the mentality, but taking a world like construction that is a little bit, like you said, rough and gruff and little hard edged, and bringing that relationship aspect to it, and the mentality of taking care of each other and all those kind of things, and your employees. Maybe speak to, that's obviously new for this industry, right? And we've actually talked to quite a few people, my uncle being one of them, and we had another girl on that was kind of the same thing, of walking around and saying thank you to everybody, and being really open and honest with a lot of people, and treating them with the respect that they deserve. But kind of on that too is the digital aspect, right? I mean, it seems like you guys are doing a lot there as well, and I have to imagine with your background, that might be something that you're pushing and helping out as well.
Absolutely. From an online presence, we are using a lot of digital marketing. We're, growing the website, we're growing our social media aspect, but also from a sales presentation standpoint, right? I've been in a number of presentations and I look at it and I'm like, just not quite there yet.
But that's the construction thing, right?
That's a construction thing. And I'll tell you what, you guys, the exciting thing about it.
It got by till 2018.
The exciting thing about it is the audience is overwhelmed. And I'm like just going, oh dear.
Low-hanging fruit.
Yes, don't even really
10 minutes
know.
of a PowerPoint lesson and you could blow people away, right?
And then just things, we live in a video world, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to be really working on, I've got a lot of things I need to solidify, but one of the things I want to do from a digital standpoint is putting out nice little videos, right? Getting our YouTube channel populated and talking about not only our product, but talking about some of our projects. Working with partners, hey, we really love working with Holland. They're great to us. We've done 10 projects with them. Today we're meeting with the lead superintendent of the West Coast, doing like what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
We are so hungry for content and we have so many different ways we can get it. I want to hit all of them.
Right.
I want the world to know that, this isn't just, we just started yesterday and maybe I don't have 30 years of experience, but in this particular industry or that particular trade, but I do have, I think, enough gumption to be able to take it to the next level. So we do need to use technology a lot better than we're using it now. And we also need to understand and kind of debunk some of the myths that are out there, right? We have a whole new customer base that's growing that is not necessarily as concerned about that customer base that we're on the tail end of, right?
Yep.
And so when you look in this multifamily home market and you look at, well, who's starting to move into homes, right? Millennials are starting to move into homes and they're very tech savvy. And so probably having manual shades is not what they want. They want a motorized shade. Yep. They want to be able to control it from their phone. Mm-hmm. They also want to have their lights integrated with it. They want to have other areas of a smart home integrated with it. And they don't necessarily care what name it has on it, right? They don't care what Tron it is. They want something that works and is reliable. You're always going to have the market that's very, prestige. They need the label. They need that, and that's fine. But that's really kind of a smaller portion of your market. Right. Those that are in it, they're probably doing really well. But we need to look at what that customer base is and how do we present to them, right? And we have these millennials that are also in these decision making.
I was going to say, then they're also moving into the roles of the decision making.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, just giving them a regular PowerPoint. Yeah. They'll be asleep before you even start.
Well, and I mean, if you don't know them, or if you didn't have any if they don't have any preconceived notions of you or haven't heard of you, they're looking you up, right? Yep. I mean, they're on the internet, they're on social media, they're trying to find out as much as they can before you even walk in the door. So
absolutely,
that's where I think a lot of this, the construction space especially, is going towards now, and I applaud it, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, it's great because you guys know this probably better than anyone. The old adage, not a great adage, but technology is going to separate the men from the boys really quick here, right? If you're not keeping up with those different forms of communication, you're going to lose sales, right?
And it's going to be real quick. It's going to be one of those things that
not only do you have to have that online presence, whether it's from your social media or from your website or your presentations or whatever else, but you need to be moving with the communication styles of your customers as well. And sometimes they want a formal email. Sometimes they want an informal phone call. Sometimes they want a text message. Sometimes they'll message you through an app. You can't just say you're only going to use one form of communication, right? But then also internally, you have to build your team up to be prepared for, how are we communicating internally to allow us to better service our customers? And that's a whole new different mindset, right? If you're a smaller company, you'll find that you're typically reactionary to a lot of different things. Right. And the way you communicate is, I need something, I need it now, so I'm going to call that person. And I have no respect for what that person is in the middle of, because because I have a need and it's now. And so I'm going to call that person and try and get that need, right? So I have to go through this process internally of like, listen, guys, we can't just call each other whenever we have a question. If it's let's save the call for when it's really important, so that I know in my role, if I'm getting a call from someone, it's not just
everything.
Exactly. It's not just because they want to tell me
over here.
Right. If I get a text message, then maybe that's that next direct layer down, right? But what I would really like you guys to do is be respectful of everyone's time within the organization. And if you need to talk to the estimation department, don't just call them, right? Send out a note and ask, when is a good time for me to go over this project?
Right.
Can I set aside some time in your calendar here and there? And you'll find that time will come rather quickly, and you'll get it done. And now you've been respectful to your own teammates. You've also now allowed everyone to have max use of their day,
right?
Because we've developed this great form of communication, and then that goes out to your customers, right? And you have to also train your customers. And that's something that I don't think a lot of I grew up in the old school. My parents owned their own business, right? It was retail. So it's the customer's always right. That's what we grew up with. Yeah. Customer isn't always right. Yeah. They're going to give you a lot of great guidance and they're going to show you what's right and what's wrong. But you also have to train the customer just as much as you need to train your own internal people.
Well, and I think that comes out of a respect of your own time, right? I mean, if you're that guy that's just going to roll over and do whatever they say whenever you want, I mean, you're not going to be efficient. You're not respecting your own time and of your own company. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's important for us, is to make sure that there's those communication levels on internally, externally. We're aware of the wide base of customers that we're going after. And there's still some people out there that until they shake your hand, they're not going to sign the contract.
Right.
Yeah.
Others don't want to meet you.
Yeah.
And you can't be hurt by either. You just have to be flexible. And you have to understand that in the world we live in, people are getting information quick. And if you're not reacting quickly, if you're not communicating quickly, you're going to be missing out on opportunities. Yep. So you make that decision on what are your growth goals, what do you want to accomplish, and then that can measure that communication and how it's handled internally and externally. But this could all change next week.
Yeah.
And if we as business people and as consumers aren't open to that, then we're going to get left in the dust, just like everybody does. And that's not anything that we're interested in doing, right? We want to be at the forefront. We want people to look at DSB and say, that's what I want to do, right? We want them, this is going to sound horrible, I want them recruiting the heck out of my people.
Right.
Because they know they're good and they know they've come from good stock and that they could go on and be relevant there. But I want to create a work environment that they're flattered by that pursuant,
but they never want to leave.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's a hard balance.
Oh yeah,
it's a hard balance. But I think it just comes to honesty up front and having those communications and obviously you got to listen and you got to learn.
Yeah.
I think too many leaders get their head wrapped around this is the way it is and there's no other way.
Yeah.
I have that problem in a lot of different areas.
Especially if they've been doing it for a really long time, right?
Yeah.
You find it. I mean, we've had guys in here that have been doing this in this industry for 30 plus years.
Yep.
And you talk to them about social media, and they go, "No,
I'm good.
Yeah, I don't need that." And you're kind of like, "Well, I mean, unless you're planning on retiring next year, like,
you might need that."
Yeah. So.
And in our space, I mean, that's the thing too. Is it doesn't matter if you have 1,000 followers or 100 followers or 10 followers. The fact that you've made the effort to do it really just kind of opens the door. Because if you look at a lot of people out there, there's not a lot of them that have a huge online presence, but their customer base is online. So that's where you're gonna find them, right? Yes, use all your traditional channels, but you need to cover the gamut. At least that's my belief. You know?
So what is? I mean, I know you have a long runway ahead of you when we talk about future. I've only been in here for 4 or 5 months, but in this position. But what does the future look like for you personally, for the company? Where are you guys trying to go?
Yeah. Wow. What a question. But, I think the fact that I'm stumped is probably a good thing.
Yeah.
Because I do see so many different opportunities and so many different pathways for us to go down. And I feel like I just kind of feel like we're looking at a couple maps right now. We haven't quite chosen the exact route we want to go. We don't want to...
Like a discovery phase.
Yeah, because, ownership and the leadership from that level has some guidance. Our manufacturing partner has some guidance. I have my own ideas. And then we've got kind of some industry things that are out there. So I really want to find a mesh between all of those. But I think most importantly for us is to get our infrastructure together, right? Simple things.
Yeah, especially before growth, right?
Exactly. Simple things like having the right operating systems that you use as a company, whether that's just for communication or CRMs, calendaring, your CRM, how you're tracking your orders, how you're tracking your projects. I think that is our biggest focus right now. At the same time, it's personnel, right? Because one big thing that has been important for the growth of our company is to change the culture. And the culture had been reactionary and had been just get the job done and whatever else, and not necessarily think about what's happening the next week and the next month. So let's get the infrastructure together, both from a systems standpoint, from a policy and procedure standpoint, and then especially from a personnel standpoint, right? And you get all those right people in the right places, you take the handcuffs off and say,
open the
go
floodgates
for
and let
it,
them go.
right? And then part of being a leader is knowing I may have this vision of how I wanted something, but maybe somebody has a different idea. And maybe it's in your mind or experience isn't exactly what's needed, but maybe it is.
Right.
And the confidence that I would give that individual in creating that system and putting that together, implementing it, changing the culture of how we're going to do this, well, then that person is bought in.
They're in, yep.
And they're a part of this growth. and they should receive a variety of different stimuluses back, and not just financial.
Yep.
Right? Every study you look at, right? Yes, financial is important in a job, but your quality of life and your growth potential and your interaction with the people that you're working with, that's very important.
Yep.
And we're all going into this battle, so we need to be comfortable, right? Yep. We need to be comfortable that I've got people that are going to be willing to cover me, right? Or go in the back, or sometimes take point, right? But in my leadership role, I have to be at point up first. And so that's really what I've been doing for the last 3 to 4 months is I've been taking point, really trying to understand our business, really trying to get in deep and understand all different aspects of it so that I can come back and look and see what we've done historically, how we're kind of acting now, and what is the best pathward forward.
Yeah.
Because what it might be is what we've done historically. Right? Why reinvent the wheel if we've now looked at this or maybe it's a hybrid between the two, or maybe these are just completely wrong altogether.
Something you don't even know.
And we got to go. But I can't rely upon myself to keep that in focus all the time. I lay that groundwork out. I point people in the right direction. I learn the information. You get everybody involved. You get everybody a part of that. And I just feel confident that you're going to grow and you're going to meet those.
Find a way.
Meet those goals. So that's really it. Infrastructure, both, from the systems that we're using, the policies and procedures, and then the people. And there's a lot that I can take over, obviously, from my experience in the entertainment world and the event technology. And there's a lot to learn as well, because I can't just expect everyone is going to be happy with that, right? I have to be respectful of this industry that's been around for centuries. Right. And that there are just certain things that are kind of etched in stone, right? And so you deal with those.
Rules of construction, right?
But you there's also situations where there's going to be a new set of stone put out in front of us, and we're going to write new rules in it. Yep. And I want to be there and ready to go, when that happens. And so that's the focus, is always going, not necessarily forward, but always going in a direction that's going to help you to get to those goals, right? So we're clear on what our end goal is, right? We know what those revenues goals are. We've talked about them last year. We talked about them this year. We're going to continue to talk about them. And then as we learn more, we're going to refine those even more, and we're going to paint them on the walls. And if we make them, we're going to celebrate. And if we don't, we're going to try and understand why and what can we do to change that course or that path. You know, so you do need to have that direction always to bring you back, the compass or whatever you want to call it. But we don't necessarily know which which trail we're gonna take, which direction we're gonna go.
Well, it should be fun either way, man.
I think so.
Yeah.
I am excited about it, you know, and again, as mentioned,
it'll be fun to follow for sure.
I am a squirrel, one of those guys that can get distracted very easily. So I have to make sure that, you know, like myself, we all stay focused, but we also give ourselves the distractions, right? So my distractions are my personal life. I love going out and running around and blowing the whistle at people and getting called a lot of not really cool names. But I love the sport of soccer and I love to referee. I love to play guitar because it's something I've been doing for a long time, and people love music and it makes you feel good. So if I can go out and provide that to people or my family or whatever, great. Every one of those things helps Kirk be Kirk in whatever role that he's in. Yeah. And right now, thankfully, he's in this great role as president of this burgeoning company that has a history, but really has, you know, just this vast horizon to go after if we really want to apply ourselves and go to it. Yeah. And I know we do, because I wouldn't be here talking to you guys if we didn't. Yeah. I wouldn't have gotten that call last summer when I was cleaning my garage that says, hey, what are you doing? Yeah. Yep. I wouldn't have been introduced through a guy that I met playing ice hockey in my 30s that I became a good friend with. So it really goes back to those relationships, right? And how you cultivate those relationships and how you go. If I'd never done that, I never would have had this relationship. I never would have gotten into this role, and I wouldn't be here talking to you guys and excited at, you know, I've got a lot of friends right now that are struggling. Yeah. You know, a lot of people that I've spent a lot of hours with, and they're struggling. And I was afforded the opportunity to, you know, be flexible and get into a role that thus far has been very rewarding, very exciting, and just has limitless possibilities, really.
Yeah, so, that's awesome, man. Well, we'll let you run. I know you're probably busy. I got lunch.
You got a lunch plan.
Got a lunch plan with my buddy. Yeah, I'm going to go to his.
Get the pizza, man. Get the mama. The grandma pie. That one's
the
good
one
with
the onions in it?
Oh,
onions and breadcrumbs.
You know, the best part is when they were first opening up, Matt on Fridays would bring in all their creations and we would do taste tests, right? He would say this, and this.
So when
tell us what it is.
Here,
it was fantastic.
He was here with a couple of
It
marketing
was like a 10:30
people.
show.
Yeah.
And then we went
over and grabbed lunch because same thing. He was testing a different cheese pizza and he brought out a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
It was...
Yeah, Matt's a great guy, lots of energy, and I've learned a lot from him, obviously, and you know, especially just taking something that maybe is not your expertise and running with it. Yeah. So it's
before we let you go, make sure you let everybody know how to get a hold of you, how to find you, where you guys are at if they want to look.
Yeah. So right now, everything is under the longest possible name we could figure out. It's www.directshadesandblinds.com.
All spelled out.
All spelled out. We have a webpage. It's still in development, so lots of love that needs to be given to it. We have a LinkedIn page. So Kirk Lane, would love to connect with you online. I think that's important to have not only those real face-to-face connections, but the virtual connections as well, because people can help you out. And then, you know, we have all your normal Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Still have a long ways to go as it relates to content, but we're getting there. And really excited about it. And we're hoping pretty soon, you know, we're going to be going through some, you know, changes, maybe some kind of rebranding stuff, and maybe not so long of a name to find us on the interweb.
Make it easier.
Yeah. So yeah.
Well, very cool, man. Well, we appreciate it. It's been awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate it as well. It's been great. Sometimes it's really nice to kind of hear your thoughts.
I know, right?
To really think about where you're going. And I look
good external
forward,
processing.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys giving me this opportunity, and definitely going to
look forward
spread the word out on all of our sites.
Appreciate it.
And look forward to hearing this episode. And now I want to jump back into Matt's episode and a few others.
Yeah. It was 60 something, right?
We can find it. It was a while ago, but
That's great.
Last summer.
Yeah. I'm really excited. Well, I appreciate it. you guys. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, man. Stay safe out there.
Thanks.
Have a good one. Hey, thanks for listening. And if you've made it this far, go ahead and give us a like or 5 stars or whatever means you like us.
Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next episode. And check out our website for more video content and extras.
While you're there, shoot us a message if you want to be a guest. We'd love to have you on.
Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.